Hi everyone and welcome to this week's EBC. We're in Aliso, Viejo in California, just south of Los Angeles. And this week we're coming to you from California, unfortunately because I was at a funeral yesterday for a good friend of mine, someone that I had worked with, and whose life was cut too short actually by cancer. But we're here actually and we're thinking about John 17 verses 6 through 19. And these verses actually are really a fun set of verses to be thinking about the experience that we've just had in celebrating a life that was cut short too early. So the first thing to know about John 17 is that even though we start in verse 6 in these readings, if you go and you take a look at where John 17 starts, it's actually a prayer that Jesus is saying for his disciples. And I just want to start there for a moment, just how powerful that thought is, that Jesus is taking the time, as he's been teaching his disciples, and now as he knows he's about to suffer death on the cross and resurrection, he's taking the time to pray for his disciples. It's an important piece of what we would think about for ourselves as well, to be remembering that there is value not just in praying to God, but taking a moment to pray for other people as well. And by the way, we all do this, so I'm not criticizing anyone to say this, but I will say, how many times do we shoot out a quick little text, or we send a little note, or whatever it is we do that we say, oh, my prayers are with you. And then let me just ask for a moment, do you actually pause in that moment and then say the prayer that you're thinking of as you're telling people that your prayers are with them? Because God's ready for us to talk to him right then and actually say the prayer on behalf of the people that we love in that moment. So just one really neat thing to be thinking about, the way that Jesus is praying for his disciples. Now, so what does Jesus say when he starts his prayer? Well, first of all, he talks to God for a couple of minutes about sort of the fact that Jesus had been teaching his disciples and that now his disciples understand what Jesus has been teaching. And that all by itself is another great moment to be thinking about the fact that not only is Jesus praying to God on behalf of his disciples, but he's just having a conversation, right? He's talking to God about what's been happening in his life and how he thinks he's been doing about it. And that's a great lesson too, that the prayer doesn't always have to be just sort of a quick little, please help me do whatever, or help someone else with what they're doing. There's a conversation that can happen, and Jesus is modeling for us that sort of conversation that you can have with God. But then he does go on and he says a couple of things. He says, first of all, bring my joy to my disciples. And we've heard that already actually last week in John 15 as well. He's praying for that joy to come to his disciples. And then he asks for God to bring protection for his disciples. And this is a really neat aspect of the prayer, in part because we hear Jesus saying, that the world is going to be against his disciples, just as the world was against Jesus at that moment. And when you think about that, you're thinking like, okay, well, the world is kind of a tough place in some instances, but Jesus pauses for a moment and he says, let's be clear here. I'm not saying that I'm asking you to take them out of the world because, coming to paradise would be better. But he says, protect them while they're in the world. And I think that's just such an important message as well, that Jesus wants his disciples to be present in the world, even when it is a tough place, but with God's protection in order to be doing the things that they are there to do. Which brings me back, by the way, to the funeral that we had yesterday, that we had a wonderful time reminiscing about a very wonderful person. And we spent quite a lot of time thinking about all of the fantastic things that person had done. And he had a very accomplished life. And his mom is still alive. She's extremely proud of him, and I got to meet her. His sister, very, very proud of him. Everyone loved him. It was a fantastic family. But you know what no one said? No one ever said, and for good reason, that all of the great things and accomplishments that he had done, that they were why he was going to go to heaven, that he had worked his way there, that he had deserved to be there for those reasons. They celebrated the great things that he had done because of the people he was helping and the purpose and mission he felt in doing those things. So when Jesus prays to God in this prayer, that he would like protection for the disciples, but not that he wants the disciples to be taken from the world. I think it's because Jesus recognizes that there's still work to be done here in our everyday lives. So everyone, have a great week. Hug the loved ones around you and look for those ways to do Jesus' good work here in our everyday lives.